I tried to show her she didn't. By the time I went back, she died. She couldn't believe it. She died. So I took her head off. And I said that was the end of it. None of this zombie she was done.
What began as an ordinary summer afternoon on the campus of the University of Illinois would quietly become the starting point of one of the most tragic and disturbing crimes in the history of international students in the United States. Surveillance cameras later captured the final confirmed moments of a young woman standing alone at a street corner. She had just missed a bus and appeared to be checking her phone, likely trying to figure out another way to reach her destination. A dark-colored car slowed down beside her. There was a brief exchange between the driver and the woman. Then, without visible hesitation, she opened the passenger door and got inside. The car drove away. That woman was 26-year-old Yingying Zhang, and that moment would be the last time she was seen alive. Yingying Zhang was born in Nanping, a city in southeastern China. She came from a humble rural family that placed great importance on education and perseverance. Her father later described her as a daughter who worked just as hard for others as she did for herself, always thinking about how her success could benefit her family, her friends, and her community. From an early age, Yingying stood out academically. She consistently ranked at the top of her class and devoted much of her life to learning. She earned her undergraduate degree from Sun Yat-sen University and later completed a master's degree in environmental engineering. Beyond academics, Yingying was known for her love of music and once sang in a band. Those who knew her described her as kind, driven, and optimistic about the future. In April 2017, Yingying made a major life decision. She left her home and family in China and traveled more than 7,000 miles to the United States to become a visiting scholar at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Her research focused on photosynthesis and crop productivity, work she hoped would one day contribute to agricultural development and food security. Her plan was to spend 1 year in Illinois, then return to China to pursue a PhD and ultimately become a university professor. Leaving home was not easy. Her parents were proud but deeply concerned. Yingying's mother later admitted she was worried but chose not to voice her fears, afraid that doing so might discourage her daughter. Yingying was independent and determined, and once she set her mind on something, she followed through. Her fiancé, Hui Xin, remained in China, counting down the days until they would reunite. They were planning to get married in October 2017, just a few months away. By June, Yingying had been in Illinois for nearly 2 months. She was settling into life on campus, focusing on her research, and making new friends. June 9, 2017, was expected to be a busy but routine day. That morning, Yingying arrived on campus at approximately 8:30 a.m. to work in the lab. Around noon, she returned briefly to her dormitory to have lunch. Shortly afterward, she headed back out for an appointment with a leasing agent. She was hoping to view a new apartment and possibly sign a lease, allowing her to move closer to campus. At 1:39 p.m., Yingying sent a text message to the leasing agent, explaining that she would be about 10 minutes late. The agent replied that it was no problem. After lunch, Yingying boarded the first of 2 buses required to reach the apartment. Surveillance footage later confirmed that she got off at the correct stop, but on the opposite side of the road from where she needed to be. As she attempted to cross and catch her second bus, it pulled away just seconds before she reached it. She tried waving it down, but it did not stop. Another camera captured her walking several blocks away, likely trying to determine an alternative route. Eventually, she stopped at a street corner, waiting. It was at this moment that the dark car pulled up beside her. At approximately 2 p.m., Yingying Zhang entered the vehicle. At 2:38 p.m., the leasing agent was still waiting. Yingying never arrived. As the afternoon turned into evening, friends and colleagues attempted to contact her, but she did not answer calls or messages. She missed her scheduled research work and failed to show up for dinner plans around 7 p.m. Shortly after 7 p.m., One of her friends contacted the University of Illinois Police Department to report her missing. Officers conducted a welfare check at Ying Ying's dorm room around 9 p.m. The room appeared undisturbed. There were no signs of forced entry. Her passport, travel documents, and some cash were still inside. Everything suggested that she had fully intended to return. Initially, police hoped that Ying Ying had simply become overwhelmed and needed time away. But by the next day, nearly 24 hours had passed without any contact. At that point, it was clear that this was no longer a routine absence. Ying Ying Zhang was officially a missing person. The search quickly expanded. Campus police, local law enforcement, and the FBI became involved. Investigators attempted to trace Ying Ying's phone, which last pinged near an Illinois bus station, but her phone itself was never recovered. What ultimately provided the first major breakthrough was the university's extensive network of surveillance cameras. Investigators painstakingly reviewed footage from multiple locations, reconstructing Ying Ying's movements throughout the day. They saw her board the first bus, miss the second, walk alone through the neighborhood, and finally speak briefly with the driver of a dark-colored car before getting inside. Authorities could not identify the driver from the footage, but they were able to determine the vehicle's make and model, a black Saturn Astra, a relatively uncommon car in the area. Even more troubling, additional footage showed the vehicle circling the neighborhood before approaching Ying Ying, suggesting that the encounter may not have been random. As investigators canvassed the area for information, a critical witness came forward. Another student reported that earlier that same day, approximately 4 hours before Ying Ying disappeared, a man driving a dark car had approached her. He claimed to be an undercover police officer and showed what appeared to be a badge. The student described it as cheap and fake, resembling part of a costume. The man asked her to get into his car. She refused, and he drove away. The description of the vehicle matched the Saturn Astra seen on surveillance footage. Investigators soon learned that there were only 18 black four-door Saturn Astras registered in Champaign County. More than half were immediately ruled out. One vehicle, however, drew particular attention. It belonged to a 28-year-old man named Brent Allen Christensen, a former PhD student and teaching assistant at the University of Illinois, who lived just minutes from where Ying Ying was last seen. On June 12th, police went to his apartment and spoke with him for the first time. At that moment, the investigation had narrowed to a single, deeply unsettling possibility. When police first spoke to Brent Allen Christensen on June 12, 2017, he did not appear alarmed. At 28 years old, Christensen was a longtime resident of Champaign, a former PhD student in physics, and a teaching assistant at the University of Illinois. He had no criminal record and presented himself as cooperative. He told officers that he could not clearly remember where he had been on June 9th, but believed he was likely at home playing video games or applying for jobs. His wife, from whom he was separated but still living with, was out of town and unable to confirm his whereabouts. At the time, police had little direct evidence tying him to Ying Ying Zhang's disappearance. However, the surveillance footage showing a black Saturn Astra with a sunroof and a broken hubcap raised immediate concern. When officers photographed Christensen's car, they noticed it matched those exact details. 3 days later, on June 15th, investigators brought Christensen in for a formal interview.
We want to get this resolved so everybody can move on with their lives.
Sorry about that, Brent. Our system's running a little bit slow. It's like, I don't know, the storm's coming in, we're getting power outages. Like I said, you're home. My name is Anthony Manganaro, especially with the FBI. I'm assigned here at Champaign. And then this is Eric?
Yeah, Detective Eric Cyrus.
Detective with University Police, okay. We are investigating the disappearance of Ms. Ying Ying. The most viable tip that we had referred to a black Saturn Astra. So that's why he came to talk to you.
Yeah. I graduated a couple weeks ago, so I'm looking for jobs right now. So,
Okay.
I mean, I was either playing video games on my computer or taking an afternoon nap. So I looked into certain things to try and see if I could get some kind of info for an alibi. I sent some texts around that time, but none exactly between 2 and 3.
You said your wife was out of town.
Yes.
The guys mentioned something about Wisconsin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You guys are originally from there, or
Yes.
okay. Do you know what days she was in Wisconsin?
Like late Thursday night, early Friday morning until Sunday evening.
Can you remember, you said you played video games all day on Friday?
Yeah.
Is it just between the time period that he's asking about, or just literally all day?
Literally all day. At the moment, not really hanging out with too many people or talking to too many people. My wife and the girl I talked to, she was busy. My wife was out of town, so it's like, well, I'm home today. So, yeah. Just
You
kind
didn't go cruising campus or anything?
I did on Saturday, but I mean, getting a little stir crazy, just decided to go for a drive on Saturday. But
Did you go out to eat or anything? Go any places?
no, I didn't go to eat.
This time, the tone was markedly different. FBI agents and university detectives questioned him for more than an hour, confronting him with inconsistencies in his story. Initially calm, Christensen soon became visibly uncomfortable. His leg began twitching, his face flushed, then turned pale, his breathing grew shallow. Investigators told him they had tracked the movements of his vehicle throughout the campus area using surveillance cameras. They stated plainly that they knew he had picked up Ying Zhang. At first, Christensen denied it. Eventually, under mounting pressure, he admitted that he had given an Asian woman a ride. He claimed she became nervous when he took what he described as a quicker route, and that he let her out of the car shortly afterward. He insisted that he did not know whether the woman was Ying and suggested it may not have even been the same day. Detectives did not believe him. There was no footage showing Ying exiting the vehicle. There were no witnesses who saw her walking away, and investigators already knew that a man driving a similar car had earlier attempted to lure another student by pretending to be a police officer. Despite their suspicions, authorities did not yet have enough evidence to arrest Christensen. Instead, they made a strategic decision. They placed him under covert surveillance. At the same time, investigators contacted a woman named Tara, whom Christensen had been seeing in a polyamorous and BDSM-style relationship. When she learned that he was a suspect in Ying Zhang's disappearance, she told police that Christensen had already made disturbing comments about the case. She agreed to cooperate. Tara was given recording devices and asked to capture as much information as possible. Just days later, Christensen attended a public vigil held in honor of Ying Zhang. Surrounded by hundreds of people praying for her safe return, he walked alongside Tara. It was there, amid candles and posters bearing Ying's face, that he began speaking cryptically. He told Tara that no one there knew the truth. He claimed Ying had fought hard, describing her resistance in disturbing detail. Over the following days, Tara recorded 9 conversations with Christensen.
She was, I choked her for 10 minutes. In my hand, I released her breath. She believed that she was alive. So I carried her into my bathroom. Up the bat, I hit her on the head as hard as I could, and it broke her head open.
Each was more chilling than the last. Christensen confessed that he had planned to abduct and murder someone months before Ying disappeared. He admitted that on June 9th, he posed as a police officer to gain Ying's trust and convince her to get into his car after she missed her bus. He drove her back to his apartment, where he raped her and strangled her for approximately 10 minutes. He described her struggle to survive as superhuman. He then admitted that he beat her with a baseball bat and stabbed her to ensure she was dead. In one of the most horrifying admissions, Christensen described decapitating her and dismembering her body. He placed her remains into separate bags and disposed of them in a dumpster outside his apartment. Over the next several hours, he drove more than 100 miles, discarding her personal belongings throughout the Champaign area. Christensen told Tara that Ying Ying's body would never be found and that her family would leave the United States empty-handed. He compared himself to serial killer Ted Bundy and boasted about how easily he had evaded detection. In text messages, he claimed Ying Ying was his 13th victim, though investigators later found no evidence confirming additional murders. On June 30th, 2017, Christensen's birthday, federal agents arrested him. Subsequent forensic testing confirmed Ying Ying Zhang's blood and DNA inside his apartment. According to prosecutors, the probability that the DNA belonged to anyone else was astronomically small. Investigators also seized Christensen's electronic devices, uncovering extensive evidence of violent fantasies, research into serial killers, material related to kidnapping and rape scenarios, and studies on human decomposition. The student who had earlier reported being approached by a fake police officer identified Christensen from a photo lineup. The case against him was overwhelming. Christensen was charged in federal court with kidnapping resulting in death and multiple counts of making false statements to the FBI. Because the crime was prosecuted federally, the death penalty was on the table, even though Illinois had abolished capital punishment years earlier. During the trial, Christensen's attorneys conceded that he was responsible for Ying Ying Zhang's death, but argued against the prosecution's version of events. They claimed he was intoxicated during his recorded confessions and attempted to introduce evidence of mental illness and substance abuse. Prosecutors countered with hours of recordings, forensic evidence, and witness testimony. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found Christensen guilty on all counts. The sentencing phase, however, proved more complicated. Jurors were unable to reach a unanimous decision on whether to impose the death penalty. As a result, the judge sentenced Christensen to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, Christensen showed little emotion. The judge openly criticized his complete lack of remorse. Ying Ying Zhang's family sat through every stage of the trial. Her father spoke tearfully about the loss of his only daughter, describing a pain that no language could adequately express. Her mother broke down outside the courtroom, pleading for information about where her daughter's remains might be found. Despite years of searching, Ying Ying Zhang's body has never been recovered. Investigators believe her remains were compacted at a landfill, making recovery nearly impossible. In Champaign, a memorial garden now bears her name. An endowment fund was established in her honor to support international students in crisis. Ying Ying's family returned to China without her, carrying a grief that has never faded. Ying Ying Zhang was not remembered as a victim alone, but as a brilliant young woman full of promise, someone who traveled across the world to learn, to teach, and to give back. Her life was cut short by a calculated act of violence, but her story continues to serve as a warning, a remembrance, and a call for vigilance. The loss her family endured is immeasurable, and for countless students who study far from home, Ying Ying's story remains a haunting reminder that danger can exist even in places meant to represent opportunity and hope.